up? We're back on small ball. It's a Tuesday. New setup, as you can see. I'm trying out different setups and what have you. Hair's pretty long, as you can tell, and I don't have my hat today. But we're good. We're rolling, and here we go. I am so excited for today's show. I've put a lot of time into the segment I've prepared for today. The video, by the way, in this room is a little bit grainy, so I apologize for that. Let me know if the audio is bad, because that's obviously what's more important. But like I said, I'm super excited to bring you guys my 2020 mock draft. And I've said this a couple of times, and as I introduce this, I'm going to notify the world that we're live. I said this a couple of times. This is not a mock draft in the sense that this is what is going to happen. This is my, if I were the GM of each team, and tomorrow's the MLB draft. Starts at 7 o'clock. It's a 2-day draft, so it'll carry over into Thursday as well. If I were GMing each team, this is what I would do. So I'm going to bring that to you guys in just a couple of minutes. It's so good to be back. We took some time off, but we're back. And if you didn't get a chance to see my Instagram post today on the Small Ball channel, we're going to be doing a show tomorrow, probably right after day one of the draft ends, so we can recap and then talk about day two. Then we're going to be off Thursday and back at it the following Tuesday. So the draft, like the MLB draft, it's interesting to me because I've said this a couple of times. People have this like narrative. There's this narrative about the MLB draft that like it just doesn't matter as much as other sports, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me because it's the same concept. College and high school players entering, these organizations, and obviously they're not going to be able to produce immediately. It's going to take a couple of years, in some cases maybe like a year and a half to 2. But it's just delaying that process, in my opinion. So the MLB draft is undercovered, undervalued, and I'm here with you guys today to talk about my thoughts because obviously MLB over the last couple of days has done some draft preparation, but not, certainly not from other sources, other networks. There really isn't any coverage. And I think MLB's was even a little bit lacking. So here we go. Like I said, I am now the GM of every single team. And if you're watching this and you think somebody who's interested in the draft, text them, let them know we're live because it's going to be a cool show. So here we go. So starting off, I am now the general manager of the Detroit Tigers. Now, prefacing my mock draft by saying I did a couple days ago, I did my my recap of the prospects, and a couple months ago I actually gave you my top 10. So this, like I said, is a mock draft. So this is not necessarily the 29 best prospects, in my opinion, in that order. There's team fit involved, right? There's positional fit. And we'll get into the specifics on that later. But this is not just like, I think this guy's the best prospect. I think this guy's the second best prospect, and so on. This is, if I'm the GM, this is what I'm doing. So enough on that. Here we go. Detroit Tigers. I've said this many, many times. My number one prospect in the 2020 draft class is Jared Kelly. I think that this is the weakest draft class I've ever seen, and it is by far the weakest draft class for position players that I have ever seen. It's astounding. It's interesting that coincides with this shorter draft for various reasons. We'll probably talk about that after the draft. But my number one guy, the guy that I think has the most, the biggest opportunity to change a franchise for the better is Jared Kelly, right-handed arm, high school arm from Texas. Now, big time stuff. Touching 98, sits more 95, 96. Big bending curveball. The biggest thing for me with Jared Kelly is the pitchability. And I'm not going to talk too much on the specifics of these prospects because I've already done that. I'm going to talk more about fit. But Jared Kelly, to me, is the surefire number one prospect. And he's probably not going to go in the real MLB draft until late in the first round. I think he is an absolute steal. I think whoever grabs him, grabbed a really, really good pitching prospect. So I'm going to go Jared Kelly. And I've said this a couple times for the Tigers. They have Casey Mize, who's almost undoubtedly going to be the frontline starter in that rotation going forward. A lot of people would say, well, since they already got Casey Mize, now let's go offense in the draft. I think that 1-2 punch of Mize and what I think, could be Kelly would be even more valuable than balancing pitching with hitting. I think that 1-2 punch, a lot of top level teams have a lights out 1-2 punch at the top of their rotation. So I'd go Jared Kelly. Orioles, pick 2. Austin Martin is the safest pick in this draft. Shortstop from Vanderbilt, 5-tool player, the safest pick in the draft. Highest floor of anyone in this draft, Austin Martin. And if I'm the Orioles, they've been bad for a couple of years now. But when they were good, they were more predicated on team dynamic, not necessarily superstars, but no holes, fill every spot, well coached, play as a team. So I don't necessarily think they need to be looking for a superstar player here. I think Austin Martin has a chance to be a superstar. I don't think it's a great chance, but I do think he has an excellent chance to be a very good and very productive player, and soon. So I'd go Austin Martin if I'm the Orioles. The Marlins are picking 3rd. So this is a situation where I'm not necessarily going with my 3rd favorite prospect. But if I'm the Marlins, let's think about this for a second. They've been bad for quite some time. They've also had one of the weaker, if not the weakest, fan bases in the league for quite some time. And why that's relevant is because if they continue to struggle, they can get away with that more so than other teams, right? Like if the Yankees or the Red Sox or the Giants, like if one of those like blue blood franchises continued to struggle for years and years, that would be a problem. The Marlins are accustomed to it. They're already in a rebuild. And I think if they take a prospect here that doesn't work out, it just maybe delays that rebuild 1 year at the most, maybe not even. So I would go super risky pick here at 3 and take a chance on getting your next face of the franchise, and that could be Spencer Torkelson. So I would take Torkelson 3rd if I'm the Marlins. I think he's far from the 3rd best prospect in the draft. He's probably going to go number 1 overall in the MLB draft. I think there's so much bust potential with Torkelson. But like I said, if I'm the Marlins, I'm willing to take that chance and completely flip the script on this farm system, on this organization, because he's probably going to dominate the minor leagues, and he's probably going to produce early. And I think that it gives them an opportunity that they wouldn't have if they go with a slightly safer pick. So if I'm the Marlins, I go Spencer Torkelson. The Royals. This one is really interesting to me because this guy that I'm about to mention is not that high on my list. I like him a lot, but the upside is not where a top, a number 4 pick usually is. If I'm the Royals, though, I'm going to take Ed Howard. Ed Howard is, like I said, not the highest upside. Shortstop, a high school shortstop from Illinois, but tremendously high floor, like in Austin Martin, mainly because of his abilities on the defensive side of the ball. He is going to be, and almost undoubtedly, a productive, if not star-level defensive shortstop in the big leagues. I don't think that he really has the opportunity to be a star player, but I think you take his what could be elite defense. If he can be an average hitter, I just think the floor is so high. And the reason why I have him, if I'm the Royals GM, the reason why I'm so high on Howard is because he's such a perfect fit for that franchise. When they were successful back in 2015 and even before that, they were predicated on defense. They were predicated on a balanced lineup with not a lot of holes. He brings both of those things. He brings elite defense. He's not, like I said, he doesn't really have bust potential. So it kind of fits into that 9-man lineup type of mentality. And I think he has really, really good intangibles too. I haven't seen him play a lot, obviously, because he's a high school prospect. But from what I understand, I think his intangibles and leadership abilities are very good. And like I said, the defense is going to make him at least an average player, in my opinion, in the big leagues. And I think his floor is really high. I think if it's any other team, I think it's a reach. But I just think he's such a good fit with that culture, with that Royals organization. So I would actually take Ed Howard fourth. And I do like him a lot. Like, I don't necessarily think – I think it might be a little bit of a reach, but I think that, like I said, there's always that balance between ceiling and floor, and I think his floor is high enough that I would actually use the number 4 overall pick on him. The Blue Jays, number 5. This is a guy that has shot up the rankings in the last couple of months. That's Max Meyer, right-handed arm from Minnesota University, the University of Minnesota. Really high upside, big-time stuff, 6'6", big bending 12-6 curveball, good velo, 97. I think, he can touch 98. If I'm the Jays, this is a souped-up farm system and young team. Youngest team last year in 2019, by average age. The farm system's really good, primarily offensively. So that's why I'm really looking to take an arm here. And Meyer has a really good balance of upside and floor. I think his floor is high enough, and I think he has a ton of upside. I think that he could be the best pitcher in this draft. I like Jared Kelly a little bit better, but Meyer is more refined. He struggled a little bit, just a little bit with his command, but the stuff is there. So I think that the Blue Jays have an opportunity to have a superstar level team in a couple of years. And I think Max Meyer would be their best chance at capitalizing on that opportunity. Because I think, they have 3, maybe 4 really top of the line prospects. And by prospect, prospects and young players, right? You got Vladdy, Biggio, Nate Pearson, Bo Bichette. And what I would say is take a really high upside arm to potentially pair with that offense and become a powerhouse, right? Because if you go safe, then you're kind of settling for good, not great. I would take that chance and go with Max Meyer. Now, very contrary to that, if I'm the Mariners picking 6th, I'm looking to go as safe as I can. The Mariners last couple of years, some prospects really haven't panned out, right? So I would try to be as safe, as high floor as possible. And I think Nick Gonzalez represents that for me. Middle infielder from New Mexico State. He has incredible hand-eye coordination. I think that his hitting ability, he projects to be at least an average hitter, if not better. I really think the floor offensively is super, super high, and I think he's a really good fit for the Mariners because, like I said, they've had a bunch of prospects last couple of years not pan out. I think they go safe here, and I think Nick Gonzalez is a really good fit. The Pirates picking 7th. If I'm the Pirates are an organization that really I can't see them being awful for an extended period of time. I just think that they're too well run. Their fan base is too strong. And I think their farm system right now is very good. So what I would do is I would look at an arm potentially because their rotation and their young, their pitching side of the farm system is a little bit lacking. I would go with a guy who's almost guaranteed to be a back of the line starter and obviously hopefully has potential to be a little bit better than that. But Asa Lacy, I think, is too good to fall much lower than 7. I think they could take a chance on some other guys that I'm going to mention later, but I just think that Asa Lacy has too high of a ceiling and floor, that balance that we talked about, to not grab here at 7. And I think that he'd be a really good fit. That rotation, he could be the top of that rotation at some point, but Taillon's looking really strong. And I think that Asa Lacy could be a 2, maybe 3, but 3 at the very worst. I think he is refined. He's been really refined and really solid for a long time, even when he was young. So I think Asa Lacy falling much lower than 7 is a mistake. So I would take Asa Lacy here if I'm the Pirates. The Padres, this is interesting. This is probably my biggest reach of the draft. Maybe not. I have a couple big reaches, but the Padres have also had a lot of prospects not quite pan out, but now they have a super, super talented farm system and young team. What I would do if I'm the Padres, strategy-wise, is I would grab somebody who is safe, who is going to produce quickly, who is going to break into the big leagues soon, because this team is so good, right? This farm system is so good. In 2 years, probably, they're going to be firing on all cylinders. So I would grab a guy that might be able to produce in 2 to 3 years. And that looks like Tanner Burns to me, right-handed pitcher from Auburn. Very, I think low ceiling, very high floor. He's probably projected, he might even be a 3rd rounder in the MLB draft, maybe a low 2nd. I like Tanner Burns a lot. I think in his career at Auburn, he's been, one of the most dependable college arms, in the last couple of years. And because of that, I think he has a really high floor, and I think he's going to produce quickly, which I think is very important because this team is going to be good soon. And I think if you take like a high school guy or maybe somebody who's going to take a little bit more time to develop, I don't think the timing window really works out. But I think if you grab Tanner Burns, he's your number 3 starter behind, Mackenzie Gore and, potentially Luis Patino, maybe Adrian Morahan. That's a really, really, really strong staff. So I would go Tanner Burns. Like I said, it's a big reach, but I think it's a really, really good fit. Rockies are always interesting in the draft, right? Because you don't know how a hitter necessarily, is going to perform in Coors Field, and also pitchers as well. It's just a tough thing. Like, you can't really project how someone's going to play in that environment. Obviously, Coors Field in Denver is just a completely unique place to play. But that said, if I'm the Rockies, this is my 1st round pick. It's the 9th overall pick. If they go out and get a super high upside bat, preferably a power bat, in Coors, they now have the opportunity to have drafted a superstar offensive player, right? If you go safe bat, it's like, okay, he'll probably be solid in Coors in Denver, but you can probably find that in the free agent market. There's other ways of going about that. If I'm the Rockies, I think to maximize the potential of this being a home run, no pun intended, pick, I would go with a high upside bat. Like pitchers, if I'm the Rockies, drafting pitchers is really risky, especially in the 1st round, because you really can't decide. It's really difficult to figure out how they're going to pan out. I think the Rockies last couple of years have had some pitching prospects really not pan out. So I think they need to prioritize pitching more in the free agent market. I would go with Austin Hendrick because he has so much offensive upside. He's a high school outfielder from Pennsylvania, lefty bat, super good pop, right? He's not a huge guy, but he just has that wiry strength. He's 6 feet, maybe 200 pounds. I think he's more like 190, 195, but generates a lot of good bat speed. Defensively, he probably will be average at best, but he's athletic. So if he really progresses quickly, I think he could be a solid defender. But if I'm the Rockies and I see Austin Hendrick, I see an opportunity to have a superstar bat going forward, and I would take him at 9. I believe that's 9. I've lost count now, but if I'm the Rockies. Angels, I've talked about their draft strategy many, many times now. They have to go with a safe bat to complement the Joe Adells, right, in their farm system. Also, Mike Trout and Joe Adell play the same position. Really, I don't think you can draft an outfielder here. You could say pitcher because obviously their pitching is lacking, but their pitching prospects are actually really, really strong. but they have Adele and Brandon Marsh as outfielders in their system. Obviously, Mike Trout is there for the next 10 years probably. So drafting an outfielder, I think here does not make a lot of sense at all. I would go with a really safe infielder or catcher potentially, because their farm system on the pitching side is actually pretty good. Right, you got Griffin Canning. There's some depth there on the pitching side. Casey Martin from Arkansas, shortstop, is super, super high floor. He has hit at all levels, right? He's a bigger shortstop. I think he'll have some versatility potentially, but he can really run, and I think that he has a really high floor. So I would actually try to grab Casey Martin here if I'm the Angels, and I think that he can do a lot for the balance of that lineup. Unfortunately, he's a right-handed bat, which they have a lot of, but I think by the time Brandon Marsh comes up, I just think that he's a versatile bat, right? He can hit for power, he can run, he can hit for contact. So I would try to grab Casey Martin here if I'm the Angels. I didn't write down numbers, so I just want to have like the numbers more, in the back of my head here just to make sure. So that was 10. All right, so now at 11, this is tricky. Very, very tricky, here if you're the White Sox. I've said this many times. The White Sox offense is so unpredictable, so home run dependent, right? They do not have a lot of contact. They do not have a balanced lineup at all. A lot of right-handed bats, a lot of power guys who really need to make more contact. So if I'm the White Sox, this is a team that's looking really good now. I think they could go grab a high school bat, actually, preferably a contact hitting lefty stick that can complement a more of a veteran team when these young guys get to be in their late 20s. I think Zach Veen is a guy that a lot of people really like. I'm not as high on him as other people are. He's probably going to be a top 10 pick. I don't really see that, but I do think he's a really good fit because he's a really good contact bat, high school outfielder, by the way, from Florida. He's athletic. He can defend, which the White Sox have really struggled defensively last couple of years. I think that he's a really good fit here. I don't necessarily see him as, talented as a lot of people do, but I think Zach Veen could be the move here at 11 if I'm the White Sox. Now, there is a name that probably you expected to hear earlier on this list, but if I'm the Reds here at 12, Emerson Hancock is still available according to my draft. Super high upside. I think he's going to tear up the minor leagues. I see a lot of bust potential here with Hancock. I really do. I don't think he is a first-round pick. He'll probably be a top 5 pick in the MLB draft. I think he's a bust, to be perfectly honest. But if you look at this Reds team right now, they are this close to being elite. So if they grab a guy like Emerson Hancock with good velo, good stuff, he's hit or miss, but he has some dominant outings. Like I said, I was watching him early in this season to see, there was a lot of hype about Emerson Hancock early in the year for Georgia, right-handed pitcher from Georgia, by the way, in case you're not familiar. Started off the year very up and down. He had some dominant outings, but he also got completely pieced up by Georgia Southern, 6 runs in 5 innings. So he has those dominant outings. I think scouts really like high upside guys like that, and I think that he could bring a lot of trade value actually to the Reds. So if I'm here at 12 and Emerson Hancock is still available, I look at my Reds franchise and I say, if we can add one more piece, we can be a contender. So maybe they go Hancock here and look to trade him, not necessarily look for a guy here that's going to be in their organization going forward. But I think Hancock brings you the most trade value potentially here. So I would actually grab him at 12 if I'm the Reds. Now the Giants, this is interesting. So here's a problem. I'm just gonna throw this out there. Here's a problem. I made my list, right? And because I took some guys on and off the list, I messed up. and I left somehow Garrett Mitchell, outfielder from UCLA, off my list. And the reason why I'm saying that is I'm not gonna like try to move around my list. I'm just gonna go. I'm like right here. I'm just gonna say that Garrett Mitchell to me is a top 15 pick for sure, maybe even top 10. Garrett Mitchell, for those of you who don't know, has had he's been dealing with type 2 diabetes since he was in 3rd grade. And he has been, at UCLA and in high school, one of the probably the best leadership ability in this draft class. I mean, his intangibles are off the charts. Super good base runner, elite speed, big time raw tools. I think Garrett Mitchell is worth taking with a top 10 pick. If I'm the Giants here, I think that he is a little bit up and down in terms of his upside and his floor and all that. I think the Giants can get away with that. The Giants are similar to the Pirates in that they're probably not going to be bad for very long, right? Obviously, right now they're not good. I think they're the worst team in Major League Baseball, but they're such a well-run organization that I really don't see them being, having these top picks for a very long time, right? They have 13 here. They had 2 a year back. So, if I'm the Giants, I think you can get away with a high upside, low floor guy because I think that management is really, really good. And I think that it can keep the franchise from maybe some risky picks turning out to harm them in a big way. So if I'm the Giants here, I think Garrett Mitchell for sure is a great pick. But like I said, I accidentally left him off my list. So the player that I had for the Giants is Heston Kjerstad. There are 10 different ways I've heard people pronounce his name, but I'm going to go with Kjerstad because that's how it's spelled. So I apologize, Heston, if that's not how you pronounce your name because I have no idea because like I said, I've heard 10 different pronunciations. Anyway, a lot of people are really, really high on Heston. I'm going to call him Heston for the remainder of this video because I don't want to deal with his last name. Sorry, Heston. But Arkansas outfielder, defensively, I don't know if it's where it needs to be. I think he projects as like a corner guy, a left fielder, right? He doesn't really have, big time speed, big time pop, athletic. A lot of scouts see him as one of the higher ceilings offensively, especially in the power department in this draft. And I think that if you're the Giants, like I said, I see a lot of bust potential, to be honest, here with Heston. But I think they can get away with that, right? So I either go Garrett Mitchell or Heston Kjerstad. And, obviously, whichever one's not taken will go later on. But like I said, I forgot to put Garrett Mitchell on the list. That's my bad. I'm not going to shuffle it around. I'm just going to say that both of these guys are a good fit in San Francisco and I think are probably top 10 to 15 picks. I would go with Mitchell over Heston. I think his floor is a lot higher. I think either of them can go here. So for the remainder of this list, both of them, just imagine both of them have been picked. So I apologize for that. Now, the Rangers have a super good young team, really strong farm system, but primarily offensively. I would look here to get a pitcher and probably somebody who can produce pretty soon, who can crack the big leagues pretty soon. And to me, last couple of years, the Rangers have had a lot of breakout pitchers, which has been interesting. And I think that, like a Lance Lynn, right, rejuvenated his career in Texas. Like Mike Minor, for sure, had a breakout year last year. And Cole Wilcox is not necessarily a guy that I had this high on my list, but I think he's a really good fit because Cole Wilcox, right-handed arm from Georgia, I think he has a lot of upside. And not only does he have a lot of upside, but he goes a little bit under the radar with Emerson Hancock being obviously the ace of that Georgia staff. Wilcox has been a little bit underappreciated, I think. And, in some ways, I actually prefer him over Emerson Hancock. Good velo. He's hit 100, a couple of times. He usually sits 92 to 97, which is obviously, a big range. His control is not where it needs to be, but he's shown flashes of being okay in the command department. So I think if he, is able to refine himself a little bit, I think he has the opportunity to be really good, especially in that organization. And I do think there's, some bust potential, but I think they're really strong. I think that they don't necessarily need to go with a safe pick here because they already have a really strong farm system and a really good young team. So I would go with Cole Wilcox because I think he fits nicely in this organization. And I think that, the last couple of years, right, they haven't really had elite, even when they were, winning pennants, they never really had those elite arms. They've been more about kind of breakout pitchers, right? Solid, a Lance Lynn, Mike Minor, Yu Darvish. They add Corey Kluber now, who obviously used to be an elite pitcher up and down last year or two. So I think Cole Wilcox probably going to be a number 4 starter, right? I think that he'll be at least a number 4 starter. And I think with this super young, dynamic offensive roster that they have, I think you look for a guy who can be a back-end starter and just give you innings. If he can refine his command a little bit, I think he can be even maybe like a number 2 behind Corey Kluber or something like that. Now, the Phillies. So the Phillies are now, like I said a couple of times now, they've been an organization like the Giants, like the Pirates, super well run. Similar to, the Royals, like I mentioned, they've had success through team dynamic, right? No holes, not necessarily, superstar talent. So the safest arm, in my opinion, this is a reach. Many people see this as a reach. Logan Allen from Florida International, to me, is a really safe left-handed arm. I think that he is almost a lock to be an average starter in the big leagues. His command is incredible. His pitchability is also incredible. The stuff isn't really there where a first-round pick, would like it, where you'd like a first-round pick to be. But think about this for a second. Who do the Phillies have behind the plate? JT Realmuto. Okay? If they fill that staff with Logan Allen type guys, right? Similar to the Rangers, very safe, dependable, good command, pitchability. Pair that now with one of the best minds behind the plate and obviously also production on the field. But JT with his staffs has been very, very, very valuable. I think if you go grab 5 solid, dependable, good command starting pitchers with JT, that could be a really strong staff. And I think Logan Allen is the perfect fit for that. Another reason why I love Logan Allen here to the Phillies is because they are so close to being a contender. So you want somebody who's going to crack into the big leagues soon. And I think Logan Allen is very safe in both that regard and the regard of I think he's a lock to be a number 3 guy, right? And he's going to crack into the big leagues soon, I think, my opinion. So I think he's a really good fit for the Phillies. Now, the Cubs are the opposite of the Phillies and the Royals and the Giants. They have been about star players last couple of years. Rizzo, Bryant, Baez. Their mentality seems to be, if a guy is not going to be a superstar, we don't want him. Very interesting mentality, which won them a title, but I think now they're going to go into a rebuild. I don't really think there's any question about that. So I'd go high school arm. High school because I think it's going to take them some time to realize that they should rebuild. And then eventually, going to, obviously if I'm the GM, that's not valid because I would have a different opinion and I would get the rebuild going now. But I think it's going to take them some time, regardless, to get this rebuild to where it needs to be. So I'd go high schooler. I'd go arm too, because they have a lot of talent offensively. I would go with a safe high school left-handed arm. Who fits that bill better than Reed Detmers? Reed Detmers he has the opportunity to be a top 10 pick. Louisville lefty. By the way, I keep saying high school arm, but Reed Detmers, is a college arm that I think is going to take a little bit more time to develop. I think he's a little bit raw. I think that he's sort of. I think maybe 3 to 4, maybe even 5 years to get him really going. So you can go high school arm, but I think the best fit here is Reed Detmers. Super high floor, right? Good pitchability, good command, very good command, good stuff. Not great. I don't think his ceiling is that high, but he's a little bit raw. He's going to take some refinement. So I think it fits that mold of somebody who you can develop for a couple of years. By the time this rebuild starts to come into fruition, I think he could be maybe your 2 starter, your number 1 if he's better than I think. At worst, probably a number 3. He's not a guy that I have that highly on my big board, nearly as highly as, a lot of people have him. But I do see, why a lot of scouts like him. The floor is pretty high. He's produced at Louisville, and that's obviously super important. In baseball especially, there's a lot of talk about talent and tools, and production a lot of times goes a little bit under the radar. So, I think he's pretty dependable. I do see some bust potential, but I think Reed Detmers could be a good fit in Chicago. Now, the Red Sox, I like this pick that I have for the Red Sox here a lot. This is not a guy that I have in my top 30, I don't think. Maybe I'd have to think about it. But I like this pick that I have a lot. I don't even love this prospect, but I think it's such a good fit for the Red Sox. And let me explain the fit to you. This is a team that is probably going to retool, not necessarily rebuild, but it's going to take them some time to get back to contention. Also a super well-run franchise, in my opinion, the best. The best run franchise in Major League Baseball is the Red Sox. Historically speaking, not necessarily on a year-to-year basis, but, over the course of their organization. I think they go high school, high upside arm, because they have tons of talent, especially offensively. Solid farm system, not great, but solid, but super talent offensively. So you definitely want to look arm here. Like I said, it's going to take them some time to get back to where they want to be. So I think a high schooler makes a lot of sense. And I think super high upside, because they have a lot of dependable starters like an Eduardo Rodriguez, and they're they missed out on Graterol in that trade. Like he went to the Dodgers, and that was weird. But I really think that they can take a chance on a guy who might not pan out, and I think Nick Bitsko is their guy. He's been really impressive last couple of weeks, actually. Scouts are really starting to like Nick Bitsko. He's a right-handed high school arm from Pennsylvania. He's young. He's only 17. He's younger than most of the guys in this class. He's, big kid, 6'4", 220, 96 to 97. Inconsistent with his velocity. He's had some arm issues, sort of. I think that he might have some, health question marks, in terms of his arm going forward. To me, I don't love Bitsko because a lot of scouts like his curveball a lot. I think it's a little bit erratic. I don't necessarily think that his curveball is consistent enough. I think it's big time arc, big time spin, and I think it's getting a lot of high school guys out. But I don't necessarily think at the big league level he has a go-to out pitch. So I don't actually love Nick Bitsko because also his control is decent, not amazing. I think he's young, raw. I think that he dominates the high school ranks, but I don't necessarily see his game translating to the big league level. But if I'm the Red Sox, I see a lot of upside here, and I think he's a really good fit, and scouts really like him. So maybe he brings in some trade value if you decide to ditch the rebuild and go try to contend now. Because like I said, I've said this a couple times, I think they have the roster to be a playoff team this year. I just don't think their mentality is where it needs to be. But I think they're going to contend for a playoff spot, so they can go really either way. I don't know. Well, I mean, that's a story for another day, but I think Nick Bitsko is the move for Boston. The Diamondbacks also love this pick. This is a guy that I actually have way higher on my big board, but I think that a lot of teams will be scared about his bust potential. Blaze Jordan has been a super highly touted prospect since he was 13 years old, and he won the 13U home run derby, and in doing so hit 2 balls over 500 feet at Globe Life Park, or I guess at that point it was Globe Life Field. No, Globe Life Park. Yeah, I was right. In Texas. I guess at that point it was even called Rangers Ballpark in Arlington. But moral of the story is Blaze Jordan, 13 years old, breaks onto the scene by hitting 2 balls over 500 feet. And that's just a situation where you can't overlook that, right? He's gonna have incredible pop. Doesn't really bring a lot, besides his pop to the table. So I definitely see the bust potential, but I think the offensive upside is insane. I think that, he's not a guy who, a college bat like a Torkelson, right? Big guy, smashing homers. He is a big kid, but he has been doing that since he was little, relatively speaking. So I think that speaks to his athleticism, his naturally, power-laden swing. So I actually, obviously this isn't a prospect that you would think that I would be that high on because of my, analytic quarrels. But I think he's actually a better power hitter than, than some people even think. And defensively, really not where he needs to be. I was thinking about having him go to the Giants, but I don't think, defensively he's really weak defensively, and I don't think that fits with the Giants culture. But I think in Arizona, second best hitters ballpark in the league, and Arizona the last couple of years, what they've been missing since their title in 2001 was, they've always had really talented bats. They now have a excellent pitching staff, very good bullpen. What they've really been missing is a superstar bat. And I think Blaze Jordan gives them that opportunity. I do see a lot of bust potential here, but this is a good roster with an okay farm system. I do think they can take a chance on drafting a bust. And if Blaze Jordan pans out in that ballpark, he could hit 65 home runs a year. Seriously, he has that kind of pop. So the Mets. You can't go with a pitcher because that's what they've been doing last 10 years. Hasn't worked out. I really thought about grabbing a catcher. But like I said, I think this draft class is really weak in catchers. And we'll get to some catchers in a little bit. But I'm going to go with Pete Crow Armstrong for the Mets. Like I said, you can't really go with a pitcher because that strategy hasn't worked out for them. I think you go bat. And defensively, I think the Mets are lacking. Pete Crow Armstrong is a really, really good defensive prospect. Really good speed. He's not a big guy. He's not going to hit for pop. I think that, I don't really love Pete Crow Armstrong because I think his floor is kind of low. And I also think his ceiling is a little bit low. So that balance is pretty not good. But I do see a lot of good tool. I think he has a lot of good tools. I think defensively he's strong, where I think the Mets need to prioritize defense. So I would actually go with Pete Crow Armstrong. Now, the Brewers, Yohandy Morales is another guy who has been really highly touted for a very, very long time. I remember when he was 12, I think it was, trying out for the, when they had the first, Team USA team, at age 12, they have tryouts. And he was the guy at those tryouts. He was like scouts all over the place. He was like a lock to make the team. Son, by the way, of Andy Morales, who was a big leaguer. So obviously, family ties to the big leagues. Family knows what it takes. Super toolsy. And the thing that I love actually about Morales is all of his question marks, which scouts have a lot of, and I don't necessarily get it. I think he's a really strong prospect. I could actually have him a lot higher on this list, but I don't really know where he fits. And the Brewers, I didn't really have like a strong opinion. So I'm going to go with Morales because I think upside is off the charts. He could be that star that they're missing now that Ryan Braun is no longer a star. But the question marks that scouts have about Yohandy Morales are all things that he could very easily fix, right? It's like plate discipline, aggressive swing, right? Some defensive, maybe mental, lapses, maybe too much aggressiveness defensively, also on the base pass, all kind of things that he can fix, right? And not only can he fix them with major league level coaching, but his dad was a big leaguer. So I really think he's a young prospect. I really think that in a couple of years, he's really going to be able to figure that stuff out. And I'm really not sure why scouts aren't valuing him a lot higher. He could go in the 5th round of this draft, right? He's projected. I think he's actually projected to go in the 5th round, which I think is crazy to me, because I just think he is a super, super. I just think he has a lot of opportunity to become a franchise-changing player, because I think his ceiling is super, super high and his floor isn't that low. Like I said, all the question marks are things he can take care of. So if I'm the Brewers, I think it's a steal here to get Yohandy Morales. The Cardinals. Now, what do the Cardinals need? Well, let's think. Last 20 years, right? The Cardinals have been all about making their pitchers better. And how? Well, last 10 years, they've had arguably the best catcher of all time defensively. Clearly the best defensive catcher in the league for a large part of those 10 years. Also coaching. They've had elite coaching, especially, on the pitching side of things. Super well-run organization. People look at this Cardinal staff. People are all over this Cardinal staff. They're like, this is top 5 staff. I look at this Cardinals pitching staff and I say, they're okay. The reason why they produce at a top 5 level is because of what they have behind the plate and what they have in the coaching ranks. So now Yadi is transitioning out of that spot. What works better than grabbing a defensive-minded, good intangibles, works well with the pitching staff, catcher? The best catcher in this class to me is a guy that scouts are really not that high on. He's projected to go in the 4th round. But Jackson Miller, to me, is probably the steal of this draft. He's very raw. High school catcher from Florida. Very, high bust potential, to be honest. But I think his intangibles are outstanding. From what I've heard, he has been amazing with pitching staffs. If I'm the Cardinals, that is exactly what I'm looking for now with Yadi fading out of that catching spot. He'll probably transition to more of a first base role, in a couple of years, which is when Jackson Miller, it probably will take him more than a couple of years because he is raw, but that's probably when he'll be ready to go. And he is a super good athlete behind the plate. His catching, fundamentals, blocking, receiving, not outstanding, but he's a super good athlete. I think he'll pick those things up quickly. And his arm is very strong, super accurate arm too. Offensively, he'll be okay. But I think if you can grab another Yadi type guy, he's not Yadi. I don't think he's Yadi, but I think great fit, and it works really well with that culture and that franchise. The Nationals, what have they been lacking last couple of years? Bullpen. They need help in the bullpen, and they're a good team, the Nationals. So I think you can take a chance on a high upside, low floor guy. Luke Little is throwing rockets right now. He hit 105 in a bullpen session a couple weeks ago. Super high upside, obviously, but very big bust potential as well. His command is not there. He's a little bit out of shape. He's a huge monster. He's 6'8". He dropped 30 pounds. He's down to like 220, but he used to be 6'8", like 250. Big lefty, profiles as a reliever. I think he's a good fit in Washington because they really haven't been able to make the bullpen work last couple of years. They've had Rodney, who's been okay up and down, and last year lowest bullpen ERA in the big leagues. So I think Luke Little is a good high upside pick here for the Nationals. The Indians, similar to the Cardinals, same story. They've been really successful on defense and in the pitching side of things because of what they've had behind the plate. Now in Roberto Perez. Roberto Perez is an outstanding defensive catcher. In a couple of years, though, obviously he's going to be getting a little bit older. So Patrick Bailey is the top catcher, and he's probably going to be the first catcher off the board in the MLB draft. I'm not that high on him at all, but I think he's a really good fit. If I'm wrong about him and he's actually, defensively, he's really strong. I don't think he's going to hit very well. But if I'm wrong and he's better than I think it's a great fit here. A lot of people have him as a first-round pick. I mean, obviously I do because I put him as a first-round pick, but I don't think he's a top 30, top 29 guy. But I would say he's a really good fit, and I could definitely see, Patrick Bailey being the Indians' pick here in the first round. The Rays are so weird. Like, it's so difficult to project for the Rays because their fan base is really lacking, right? They're talking about moving. The culture is so weird. Nothing against the Rays, but it's just a unique franchise. They have 3 starting pitchers. But I think a really good fit here is Garrett Crochet, lefty arm from Tennessee, University of Tennessee, that is. He just looks like a Rays pitcher to me. Like, I don't know why, but he just has that Blake Snell, kind of vibe to him. I just think he looks like a good fit in Tampa. I think that he has high upside. I think he's a solid prospect, right? I could see him not panning out, but I could also see him being good. I think he'll be a 3-type starter, probably. Lefty arm. They need to add, to their, their pitching ranks in the minor league system. They have a lot of good young bats. Wander Franco, they're hoping, can be the face of their franchise. So I don't necessarily think you need to go after a face of the franchise type player here. I was looking for one. I couldn't really find one here this late in the first round. But I think Garrett Crochet is a good fit. I was looking for a guy that could really change that franchise, but honestly, a lot of guys off the board already. I couldn't find, somebody that really fits that mold well. I definitely go with an arm here. They have a lot of good young bats. So I would go with Garrett Crochet from Tennessee. The Braves. If I'm the Braves and Alex Anthopoulos, I'm going to look at a guy that can – think about this roster, right? Ridiculous young talent, especially offensively. If they go out and grab a player who has the opportunity to be a superstar, this could be one of the best teams of all time, right? If you add a superstar to this lineup. Now, obviously, when you say if you can add a superstar, you should do it. It's not that simple. But Jordan Walker, is a third baseman, which is one of the only positions that they don't have a superstar young talent at currently. And I think that he has significant bust potential, but high school third baseman from Georgia, by the way, tools are off the charts. Monster power, 6'5", 220, rocket arm, at third base. I just think athleticism is off the charts. I think that his Raw power and just strength is off the charts. He could be elite, honestly. I really think he could be an elite, maybe not elite, but I think he could be a star player. Big bust potential, to be honest. He doesn't really make a lot of contact. He's struggled a little bit defensively at times, and that might be a little bit harsh. He is a good prospect. But I think you take that chance because you have probably the best young team in the league. Unbelievable current MLB roster as well. Not unbelievable, but very, 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 very good. So I think if you draft a bust in the first round, all right, whatever. And if you draft Jordan Walker and he pans out, this could be one of the best teams in a very long time. So if I'm the Braves, I'm taking a chance on Jordan Walker. I think I just said Justin Walker. Did I say Justin? I don't know. But I meant Jordan Walker. A's, this is a situation where I'm looking to get a guy who can bring trade value because the A's are probably a piece away from being an outstanding franchise right now. I would go with Justin Foscue if I'm the A's because, like I said, I think it makes a lot of sense here to take somebody who you can actually trade, like not necessarily a guy that you're looking to be in your organization when he breaks into the big leagues. Justin Foscue, second baseman from Mississippi State. I think he projects as somebody who's going to tear it up in the minor leagues. I think in the major leagues, I think he's really, really solid. I think he has a really high floor. I think he'll be a good big league player. But I think he'll bring a lot of trade value to the table. I think he'll be, a really good prospect early. I think the A's can trade him. And even if they decide not to trade him, he fits really well. Good defender, which the A's, that's what they've been about last couple of years. Second base is a position not of need necessarily, but definitely a position that they could fill with a star young player. So I think Justin Foscue makes a lot of sense for the A's. And I also like his name, Justin Foscue. It's just a cool name. The Twins now here with the 27th pick, Bryce Jarvis I have as my Twins pick because Duke righty, by the way, right-handed pitcher from Duke. I haven't heard a lot about Bryce Jarvis, but I kind of like what I've seen from him. He's been up and down, sure, good stuff, really good pitchability, really good competitive fire, I think, with Bryce Jarvis. And I think the Twins last couple of years have been like, let's throw out some starters who are pretty good, and we're going to get it more done offensively. I think Bryce Jarvis could be their 3, their 4, something like that going forward. There isn't really a great pick here, but I would definitely go with an arm. They're really good offensively. Rocco Baldelli is a really good offensive manager. I'd go with an arm. Bryce Jarvis is probably the best option for me here. Rocco Baldelli is more of an offensive manager. So I would, and they're just lacking, a little bit in the pitching side. Jose Barrios is probably going to be their ace for a while. And I think that Bryce Jarvis could be really solid. He has some bust potential, sure. But I like Bryce Jarvis. I don't know what it is. It's just that competitive fire. He's always, I think he's a battler. He's a grinder. And I think he can be their 3, their 4, something like that. The Yankees. Wow. I'm probably going to get a lot of grief for this. Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. But what do the Yankees need? Not a lot, right? Bullpen's outstanding. Starting rotation right now is outstanding. Lineup is incredible. Farm system also very solid. Not amazing, but solid. What do they need? Well, what I think they need, obviously, if you've ever watched this show before, you would know that I think they need a catcher because they no longer have Austin Romine, who in my opinion was their best catcher in 2019. Right now, their backup is Kyle Higashioka. No offense to him, but probably not, the catcher on a championship team. Gary Sanchez is their starting catcher, and I'm not going to go down that path right now. But if you've seen this show before, you will know that I am not high on Gary Sanchez. And he's starting to show his flaws a little bit more. And if in a couple of years he doesn't pan out, it would be really nice to have a young catcher to replace him, primarily a good defender. Because even if he does pan out, Gary Sanchez, if you have a really good defensive backup, that can serve well also to give Gary some nights off. Obviously, if he gets banged up, you have that depth. Obviously, we don't hope that he gets injured, but it is good to have that depth. And if you get a defensive guy that can potentially replace him, like I said, if he becomes more of a DH, if they decide to move on from Gary Sanchez, Drew Romo, not a ton of offensive upside at all, but outstanding defensive catcher, especially for a high school prospect. I think Drew Romo is a perfect fit here for the Yankees because they don't really have a lot of needs. Like I said, the only need that I think that they have is catcher. And like I said, even if Gary Sanchez turns out to be Babe Ruth, it would be nice to have a good defensive backup. Drew Romo, high school catcher from Texas. And to round out my first round mock draft, if you will, the Dodgers, they need a more balanced lineup. They need a couple more righty bats. They need more contact. I really like, and this is interesting. This is not a guy that I've not heard a lot about him. I've not done a lot of research on him, but Alika Williams from Arizona State. Really good compliment to Spencer Torkelson in the middle of that lineup. I think Alika Williams is a super talented bat. Defensively, he's he could be good. I don't want to give him any disrespect, but Alika Williams, I think, safe, balanced, versatile offensive player, which I think the Dodgers really, really should look for a safe, a righty preferably, right? They're a very left-handed heavy lineup, less so now with Mookie Betts. I think Alika Williams is actually an interesting fit here. I don't think he has the ceiling of somebody who should go in the first round, but I would go with Alika Williams if I'm the Dodgers. That's going to do it for today's show. I had a lot of fun with I don't know what this was all about, but whatever. We're just going to move on. A lot of fun with this draft stuff. Tomorrow's MLB draft. We'll obviously give our thoughts going forward, and we'll be doing some recaps and all that. I hope you guys enjoyed the lead up to the MLB draft. And thanks for watching today's show. Like, comment, subscribe, recommend if you feel inclined to do all those things or any of them. And have a healthy, happy, and safe rest of your Tuesday. We'll be back at it tomorrow to recap day 1 of the draft and talk about day 2. Super exciting stuff. Draft starts 7 p.m. Eastern time. And we'll be back to talk about it. So thanks again so much for watching. Have a healthy, happy, and safe rest of your Tuesday. And let anyone know that you think is interested in, the MLB draft or anything of that nature that would enjoy the show if you feel inclined to do so. So thanks for watching. Have a good one. We're back at it tomorrow, most likely. So peace.